Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our FileCloud Q&A videos. I am joined by Jason Dover, our Chief Product Officer. How are you doing today, Jason?
Pretty good, pretty good. Good to see you again, Katie.
Yeah, it's good to see you as always. So today we are going to dive into a topic that is really exciting for us here at FileCloud. It's data compliance, and I'm sure everyone else is very excited for this too. So it's a topic that can prompt a lot of anxiety, but it is absolutely necessary for many enterprises and organizations around the world. So we are excited to be able to talk about this with you. So, kicking us off, what is data compliance and why is it important?
And when you think about data compliance, it can have kind of a broad definition, but if I were to boil it down, it's really about ensuring that the ecosystem, the organization, all of the pieces that are part of that environment are meeting legal, regulatory, and operational requirements, right? This could be requirements that's coming from external sources because of the industry that the organization operates in. It could be things that's mandated by the government and also just the internal information security policies that have been set based on the risk posture that the organization's leadership has decided. And so this entails making sure that the right controls are in place to protect content and data from misuse, ensure that it maintains its privacy when it's required. Things like PII and PHI are handled properly, and that it also maintains its integrity. So you can ensure that the content isn't manipulated or changed in ways that could lead to bad outcomes for employees, for the employers, or for end customers as well.
Yeah, that's a really great outline for why we focus so much on this. So, why is data compliance important beyond the relevant cybersecurity concerns that enterprises might be striving for?
Yeah, well, when you think about it, data is really the most important asset that we have, that we mine, that we trade, right? If you think back in history, you would think of physical assets, could be gold, oil, land that produce these assets and whatnot. But really, right now, it's data, and this is why this is ultimately the focus of threat actors, right? When a threat actor is attempting to gain access to an ecosystem to compromise computer systems and servers and cloud environments, it's not about the infrastructure itself. The end goal is ultimately to get access to the data, either to exfiltrate it so that they can sell it or meet some other malicious ends, or to take it hostage, right? That's really the core tenet of a ransomware attack. So the value of data makes compliance around it incredibly important. Now, you combine that with the fact that you also have a number of new and emerging laws and regulations and policies at a government level and at an industry level that are also driving the importance of data compliance. With this, there's also can be implications for an organization that fails to protect sensitive content properly. Fines from the government to organizations in 2021 were estimated to be around $10 billion. This year alone, it's estimated to be around $25 billion. And that number is only expected to go up higher and higher because the more content and data of a sensitive nature that's being developed, well, we have the threat actors right there progressing their techniques to gain access to it. This, I would say, was exacerbated as well by the fact of the digitization that was expedited during COVID with remote work, changes in processes, how we interact with agencies and other organizations. The attack surface of PII and PHI is just so much larger than it was just a few years ago. So all of these things combine to create this ecosystem where compliance is ultimately more important than it's ever been in history.
It makes a lot of sense. And certainly, as a private citizen and consumer out in the digital world, I appreciate that there are regulations in place to help protect my data. So it's a really relevant topic and a really necessary endeavor for these enterprises and organizations to embark on. With
Absolutely.
that being
It'd be the wild, wild west there if there were no, no regulations.
absolutely. So with that being said, how does FileCloud help these organizations comply with regulatory requirements?
Yeah, great question. Now, of course, FileCloud, our focus is content collaboration and governance for unstructured data. And so it's interesting because a big part of FileCloud's value prop is actually making content available, right? A big part of it is bringing ease and simplicity when an organization needs to share and collaborate on content internally, but also externally beyond the boundaries of their firewall and of their organization. So it creates an interesting challenge because to generate value, to maintain competitiveness, you need to be able to collaborate. The core value prop, though, that FileCloud overlays on top of that is effectively creating a governance and compliance envelope that's wrapped around that, right? So giving administrators and organizations control of how the content is shared, being able to track and audit and whatnot. We went a step further, and inside of the product, we created a set of capabilities that we call Compliance Center. What Compliance Center effectively does is leverages templates that contains the relevant articles of different common compliance standards. We then monitor the configuration of the FileCloud ecosystem, and we've mapped our settings against those compliance profiles. And so, as an example, there's certain requirements, let's say under GDPR, where you have to give notice to an end user that's accessing certain types of content. Well, we will check your configuration to make sure that you actually have that set. If not, you'll get a red X mark. You'll get a little ding that tells you need to set this configuration in order to be compliant. Now, this is mainly focused on the part of your ecosystem that's related to file access, file collaboration, and file sharing. So I think that's important to note. Putting FileCloud in doesn't make your entire IT infrastructure and organization GDPR or ITAR compliant, right? There's other things that are relevant within those standards, down to things like physical access to your data room or to your server room. But what we do cover is ensuring that your configuration as it pertains to file access, file sharing, and auditing, we ensure that the configuration is set up to be compliant with those various standards.
Okay, so it's not FileCloud alone, it's not enterprises alone. We have this joint collaboration to help secure data and protect it and support compliance.
It's a shared responsibility model, right? And it always is. Let's take as an example something like PCI DSS, right, for payment industry. So one of the requirements there allows you to satisfy it by having a web application firewall, right? So a specialized firewall that's focused on looking at potential attacks that happen at the application layer of the network stack. Putting a firewall in place, though, or an application firewall, doesn't make your whole organization PCI DSS compliant. It's covering a part at an infrastructure level, but there's other things you have to do with how you manage and handle data, your actual payment process, training that you provide to people, locality of people, all of these other things. So it's always, for these complex compliance, a multifaceted approach. And so it's no different here. We cover and focus access and collaboration if you leverage us as the door into your ecosystem. But there's other things around the rest of the infrastructure that are also required in order for your whole organization to be compliant with CGIS, ITAR, GDPR, or various other PDPL laws that are out there.
That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned a couple of compliance regulations just then. So could you go a little bit more into depth of which compliance regulations does FileCloud support? Because there are quite a number of them available, and it really depends on your industry or your region. So what do we offer?
You're right about there being a lot. It can definitely be a bit of an alphabet soup as you start looking at all the acronyms, and very easy to get lost. From a FileCloud perspective, there's effectively two models. As I mentioned earlier, we have pre-canned and predefined templates and configurations that maps the settings in FileCloud against the articles of the standards. And that's just about making it easy and simple in order to get your FileCloud deployment into a state that's compliant. And for those pre-canned templates, we have three right now: one for ITAR, one for HIPAA, one for GDPR. These are some of the most common ones that we see our customers leveraging. But we're actually about to extend that in our next release during Q1 of 2024 to also have a predefined template for NIST 800-171, as well as one for PDPL focused on some of the requirements emerging out of the Middle East. Now, secondary to that, though, you can also leverage the product to help with meeting requirements around other standards that we don't yet have pre-canned or predefined templates for. NIST 800-171 would actually be such an example. It's in fact one of the most requested configurations that our customers come to us for. And we've built out a white paper and documentation that describes how you would configure the product to help you meet the requirements around NIST 800-171. CJIS would be another example. That's the Criminal Justice Information Services Security Policy, leveraged quite a bit for law enforcement, and also CMMC, which is a really good example of one that goes well beyond just file access. But again, we do have customers leveraging our product to help to support their overarching CMMC requirements for their organization.
Okay, so there's a lot of potential here for FileCloud to support these regulations in a variety of ways. So then what are some of the key recommendations for data compliance?
I'd say there's three core ones. There's a lot that needs to be done. CIOs, CDOs have a lot on their plate to lead their organization in a direction of compliance, but you can kind of break those activities into three. One is assessing what the actual risk and exposure is in the first place, right? Depending on the industry, depending upon the governmental regulations that your organization falls under, depending on the type of customers that you work with, the type of partners that you work with, that's going to dictate some of the risk posture that you're allowed. And then you have to look at the actual content that you have. Do you process payments? Do you have PII of citizens of localities that are governed by these privacy laws? Now, to do that, you have to have an intentional stack, right, that controls what comes into the environment and what's allowed to go out. Just having a free-for-all where people are able to use whatever tools they would like for sharing content inside and outside, having the typical cacophony of legacy file systems and ecosystems, that can make it difficult. So it's very likely that if you have compliance requirements, you're going to need to assess having a stack like FileCloud that helps you to wrap a governance, compliance, and awareness envelope around all the unstructured data that's coming into your ecosystem and potentially that's leaving your ecosystem. You need to have a way to monitor what's actually going out, what is being shared. And unfortunately, there's a lot of shadow IT happening, right? Because end users who are at the tip of the spear, they're trying to get business done. They're looking to do things fast. And sometimes it's much easier to break the rules and ask for forgiveness as opposed to complying with policy. So if you can provide a stack that gives ease of access, but allows you to still have control, well, that's a much more intentional and better route. The last thing would be assessing talent, right? Because if you have compliance requirements that you need to get in line with, you need to have champions, right? So assessing your talent that you have in-house. Do you have someone or perhaps a team that can be the champions of driving such an initiative forward? Do you have folks that have experience? But then also looking externally. So we also work with a number of partners that specialize in helping organizations meet compliance requirements. A number of service providers that leverage our product as part of their stack, but this is what they do for a living. And so leveraging external resources like that would also be another factor. We also work with technology alliance partners as well that augment our capabilities. So there's some requirements that organizations have, as an example, for ensuring that content that comes into their ecosystem, it's scanned by antivirus. That might just be a compliance requirement that InfoSec has set. And we work with a number of partners like OpSWAT, as an example, to do just that. So it's got to be a team effort. And I think that should be coming across from our talk. This is a shared responsibility model between the organization, their technology providers, and their service providers. in order to make sure that their data compliance initiatives are successful. And we're certainly here to help them on that journey.
Well, that is a really lovely overview of kind of the topic that we've been discussing today, this data compliance, and how it really is not just one person, one team, one organization helping to protect this data. It really does take a collaboration between different experts. And this is the landscape we're living in now, and it will continue to develop. So thank you very much for your time, Jason. And thank you for this discussion. I hope that it's been illuminating for everyone watching. And we'll get back to you next time with more Q&A videos.
Absolutely, Katie. Fun chatting as always, and look forward to next time.
All right. Talk to you then.